that brings us to our final topic, first-time home buyer benefits versus first-time home buyer programs. Kyle, what can you tell us about that?
I get a lot of calls from first-time home buyers, and the first thing they say is, I'm a first-time home buyer. I send them an estimate based on the loan programs that are available today, and we'll go over it together. And the first thing that really comes out is, well, I thought first-time home buyers don't have to pay a down payment, or I thought first-time home buyers don't have to come out of pocket with any money to buy a house. So there's a lot of misconceptions about what's out there. So first time home buyer means that you really haven't owned a home in the last 3 years in a lot of cases. It's not just not owning a home in general. So with the benefits that come with that, depends on the state, it depends on the program, it depends on the loan type. So for instance, from the state of Maryland, you'll get half of your transfer taxes waived as part of being a first-time home buyer. Other states don't really honor that. Pennsylvania, there's no real benefit when it comes to the tax part of it. But when somebody calls me and says they're a first-time home buyer, what they're asking for and what they get are two different things. What they're asking for is all the benefits. I don't want to spend as much out of pocket because I'm a first-time home buyer. But unfortunately, there's no national program that takes away down payment. There are programs like USDA loans and other loans, VA loans, that don't require a down payment. But if you're looking for zero down payment, that's what's called down payment assistance. And down payment assistance, while it's assistance, it's not free. So there are pitfalls to each one of these programs. Nothing's free in this world. So, for example, down payment assistance could come with a higher interest rate than your standard rate. Down payment assistance could come with a second mortgage that you have to pay in addition to the first mortgage, but it allows you to get into the home without having to come out of pocket that extra 3.5% to 5% that you normally would have to pay for a down payment. And then there are first-time homebuyer programs that allow you to put less money down, like Home Ready, Home Possible. It helps with the interest rate, helps with the mortgage insurance. So when somebody calls me and says first-time homebuyer program, this is the conversation that I'm having with them, because it's more complicated than just saying, I'm a first-time homebuyer, get me what I deserve. There's a lot of programs out there. So when you apply, it's up to Adam and I to figure out which one of these programs makes sense and then present you with a few different options that might kind of, fall in with your expectations. Is that kind of, do you agree with that, Adam?
Absolutely. What came to mind when you were talking there is always a lot of these early conversations we're having before we actually have the application information from our buyers. So I always encourage people at this point, if we were talking it out in real time, I would say, I can go over these hypotheticals with you for a half hour. There's a lot of different questions to answer, but ultimately, once you fill out the application and we go over your info, that's when we can start to dissect what's the real benefit and what's the real cost. We do have a lender or two out there that have down payment assistance programs that, if for a first time home buyer on a conventional loan, minimum down payment 3%. And we have a lender that'll kick in a 2% lender credit, but that comes at a cost, right? So if someone has $60,000 in the bank, do they want to possibly take a slightly higher interest rate to cover that? Or is that 2% better used somewhere else? It's different for the individual. Not to mention, and I do have a few agents that are very keen to this. They don't like sending out pre-approvals that show 1% down, right? Because it makes the buyer look like they don't have money, and therefore the sellers think, well, if one little thing goes wrong, we don't have a lot of flexibility here, right? So there's other factors that come into play there, and just because we put on the pre-approval that someone can do 5% down or can do 10% down, they can always add more. They can always do more. And sometimes what I do on my pre-approvals is I will even put that the buyer has excess funds, even though we're only putting 1% down, or even though we're only putting 3% down, letting the sellers know that we do have that flexibility. So yeah, getting back to what I was originally saying, it all starts with that application, kind of running back to where we started. Getting pre-approved and having the information with us allows us to give concrete information and give good feedback on to what we recommend and what the options are.
Yeah, and going back to what we talked about earlier, right? We have that pre-approval letter. We hand it over to the listing agent. It shows, 3% down or 5% down. But as a local lender, we make that phone call to the listing agent and we say, hey, look, I know what the pre-approval letter says. They're intending to put 3% down. They're a first-time home buyer. They're trying to keep as much money in their pocket as they can. However, if things go south, if something happens, there are extra funds that they have available. They've done a great job in saving some money, having some extra money available. What they really wanted to do was finish the basement and put on a deck. But if something goes wrong, there is extra funds available should we need to do that. They are a little bit flexible. It's part of being the local lender and knowing your clients, getting their needs up front. Are you willing to spend a little extra money should the appraisal come in short, or should the home inspection show that there's some repairs that are needed that the homeowner's not going to do? This is a lot about just navigating turbulent waters at times, and you want somebody who's within that touching distance to be able to represent you the right way. And before we end this, Adam, I wanted to ask you a question that maybe is not on topic, but I do know as a friend of yours that you are very, very good at music. You're in to playing guitar. You do sing in a band. I have a question. If it was the last day on Earth for you, you knew, meteorites coming right towards Earth, and you have to decide what album you're going to listen to for the next 24 hours. You can only choose one. What is that going to be?
Without hesitation, without a doubt, Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon.
Okay. All right. I
How about
myself,
you? I'm curious to
I'm a
hear your
big
answer.
90s, 2000s
Okay.
punk grunge. So Third Eye Blind, the self-titled
Oh,
album, I would have to go with that one.
Chef's Kiss, straight through, no skips on that album.
Yep.
That's one of my favorites too. Good call, Kyle. Right
Well,
on.
this is
Hey,
great.
thanks a lot, everybody. This has been a great conversation. Hope everyone's having a great day, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks, everybody.
Take care.